Service Commission order. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda. Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Also, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda unless anybody has any change. Got a motion? Can I have a second? All in favor say aye. All opposed, same sign. Listen. Motion is approved. Try another one. This one. Okay. All right, item number 6, customers to be heard or recognitions. That shouldn't make a difference. Try that. Yeah, we got. Yeah. Okay. Well, it seems a little different now. I just think I got it down a bit. All right. Customers to be heard or recognitions. You have any recognitions? I don't see it. See anyone but staff. So. Item number 7, old business. John.
A few items here. I don't think it's being addressed here, but last month we talked about Red River Electric making a discussion about any progress or results, or where are we at with that? Yes, last week the River Valley Co-op Board did discuss our request, or our offer of 30 mils. They did not make a decision last week. They're still digesting the offer. So we haven't gotten anything from that at this time. Next item here, I think all the commissioners are getting this magazine here, the Public Power magazine. I thought there was...
Let's make sure, in fact, if we have a city council member, if you're adding two, who ought to be on that list as well to receive this thing.
And then one article that jumped out to me is the customer service tips from the top of the class. I think there was some valuable information in there, but it reminded me here of a couple months ago.
Process.
Okay, all right, thank you. Mentioning here Kurt A few months ago, we had reviewed some billing, and he had gone to a cybersecurity presentation, and he was going to give us an update of what he discovered, or at least became aware of. I think if we should be getting that on the agenda, so that can be done.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Okay, all right. Next item, water main break in South Moorhead that made the paper. Anybody want to give us an update or tell us what occurred and what's going on?
John, are you referring to the break at CVS? Is that the one that you're referring to?
Right.
Okay. Basically, MPS assisted private contractor in repairing that line. So the line broke within the building itself, and so the demarcation in terms of ownership for water mains are either a curb box or a valve. That's where the customer owns after that particular point. And so this was a private water main break, if you will. So we helped them close valves and help them get the water shut down as fast as we could.
Okay.
But unfortunate, but it was a private facility that broke.
Yeah. I was anticipating that, but I appreciate clarification.
Sure.
Okay. And I mentioned to Chairman here that I had a couple items in the consent agenda, but on the emergency plan bill that's in there, I noticed a few phone contacts here in the emergency plans that I have seen. You also had your key vendors and contact and numbers, and police, hospital, mayor, other key vendors here. You may want to look at that and see if, because if you're going to grab that manual or whatever the case may be, you're going to want to have contact phones as well here for it. And then I'm assuming here that emergency plan has been reviewed with staff as well. Okay, all right, okay. Just a couple items on the billing that was, Nancy, maybe you can address this. Maybe a little bit more clarification of what the Butler CAD $103,000 item for the Centennial Generating Control System. Not sure what that is, or so again, on a billing of that amount, just a little more clarification.
Sure. The existing control system that we installed when we built the facility back in 2011 was no longer being managed or updated, so we had to replace that with a new control system. So that's what that cost is for.
When you say control system?
It's a system that basically turns all the generators on, syncs everything into the system, and then allows us to do that from the dispatch site as well too. So that's what those costs were for.
Okay. And then one more item here. Update on the roof situation. I saw we had a small bill for the Herzog roofing for the building. Is that now been all completed? And
It was a repair to the water treatment roof, actually. So there was two roofing projects this summer. One was in the dispatch facility, and then one was at the water treatment facility.
Okay.
That roof repair was a result of ice damage, largely a result of ice damage that occurred over the winter.
okay. So is this project done as well then?
No, we are waiting for them to finish up some drains that they need to install yet. That was part of the change order that you guys approved a couple months back. So we're just holding money until they do that. So there'll be another final bill that comes once they complete that work.
Okay. And then, Bill, one final item here. We are still, I guess, participating in the culture update through the village. I believe, as far as training and working with the staff.
Yeah, we continue to do training. I don't know if Nancy was
So I guess all I was looking at, I think we had asked for them to give us updates here as far as what they're doing and what they're accomplishing, and we haven't seen anything from them for several months, so that should be put on the agenda as well.
For a commission update.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, we can do that.
Okay.
That's old business, all I have.
That's it? All right, good deal. We have one over here.
So talking about water, Chris, with the news out of Newark, New Jersey, and the lead issues, could you just explain to us again what we do to make sure that the customers who still have lead supply lines into their houses are protected? Because we have no lead in the mains. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. I could first start off with kind of what's going on in Newark, New Jersey. It's a situation somewhat similar to Flint, I believe. I'm not sure of the entirety of the details or the root cause of the lead issues that are going on in Newark, but they're responding with bottled water, and it's a pretty significant event that they have in terms of compliance and lead service lines impacting the community. With respect to what we do here in Moorhead to prevent lead from leaching into the water, so our water mains are composed primarily of 3 different materials, either PVC, cast iron, or AC pipe. The water service, so that's the water mains that run through the street. Water services usually are composed of copper, and in some cases PVC, and we still have about 1,000 lead service lines in Moorhead. What we do to prevent lead leaching into the water is really twofold. We make sure that the pH of the water is non-corrosive. So that was a big issue in Flint, that there was some corrosive characteristics to the water that really kind of exacerbated the issue. So that's the first thing we do. The second thing we do is add a phosphate that really prevents that lead. For the homes that still have lead service lines, prevents that lead from leaching back into the water. So those are really the 2 key things that we do to make sure. And we actually, incidentally, every 3 years we have to do lead and copper sampling. We're mandated by EPA and the Minnesota Department of Health to complete that sampling. That was actually this past summer. So we'll get the results from that sampling process, I would expect, sometime this fall.
Is that sampling that you actually do at the homes that are served by lines?
That's correct. So roughly 15, we go to roughly 15 homes within the community that we know have lead service lines.
Okay.
And we have them collect basically what we call, or kind of colloquially call, a worst case scenario type sample, whereby the water sits in the home overnight, nobody uses any water, and then the first draw of water in the morning, we collect that sample and then send it in for analysis. Typically what we advise those folks that do have lead service lines to do is basically flush that first draw of water in the morning, and within 30 seconds usually all the lead that might be in that water service line is already gone.
So those 1,000 property owners know that they have, these are older lines, I would assume.
Typically, homes built in the 1920s, 1930s.
Yeah.
I'd say most homeowners know. Not all homeowners know or are familiar with the fact that their property may have a lead service line. We're still working on cataloging all the lead service lines within our GIS system. We know about quite a few of them, but we haven't confirmed all of them.
It would seem to be a good thing for us to know as we go forward.
Yeah.
And then to communicate with these folks so that we're working with them.
But the
We
results,
do communicate with the folks that we sample with quite a bit.
Yeah.
and I assume because of the results in the past, we don't have an issue with lead in our water in those homes, correct? They're all below the thresholds?
They're below the compliance threshold, yes, as of the last time we completed sampling, correct.
Anything else, folks?
Yep.
Chris? Before we go forward, I'd like to introduce Deb White, who arrived just after we began. But Deb is newly designated to our board from the City Council. As you recall, Councilman Gertz has resigned and left office, and so now we get you. So yeah, and you're just in time to be on the agenda. We generally at this time in the meeting we ask for any kind of an update that our city council representatives might have for us on city business.
I don't have specific things to discuss, but I'm just looking forward to working with everybody.
Cool. Well, and we were just talking a little bit before we got started. We're due for some tours of facilities and things like that. So I would imagine that might be something that might be of interest to you. We haven't been out to tour wellheads or well sites or or substations and so forth for a while. And we've been doing some construction since the last time we had a meaningful tour. So I would think that that's something we can get pulled together.
Water plant tours are very popular.
Yep.
And we will have an orientation packet for you. We're working on that. So, and then,
Thanks.
you know, we can
Sorry
meet.
to be late. Eventually someone saw me on the camera, so
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, we do have an open door right downstairs, right off the parking lot. That is the open door for this meeting.
Someone may have to show me. how
We
to
may
get
need
back
to
the
show you
parking
that.
lot.
Yeah, we may need to show you that, so, okay. Yeah. I was, in fact, I'm glad you mentioned that. I was going to just suggest that maybe we do something of a more permanent nature, rather than taped paper signs
Right.
put on outside doors, that we might actually do something that kind of directs
in.
people
Yep.
from parking and so forth. Because, yeah, I noticed tonight, again, it was just a paper sign tacked to the door. And, you know, well, it's laminated.
Yeah,
but,
yeah.
but we might be able to do something better than that, I think. So, yeah. So, okay. Well, no city business end. That means things are quiet and going well in Lake Wobegon here. So, all right. Public Service Commission members, anything from you folks? John had his say already. So. Chris.
I believe we're trying to establish dates for the budget meetings.
Oh, good. Good, okay. It's time for us to be doing that. So, in fact, golly, it's almost September, so. Okay. Mr. General Manager.
I have nothing in addition to the written report, but I will direct you to the written report because every quarter we do an update on our strategic plan, and this is the second quarter update that's in the General Manager's report. In addition to that, there are dashboards that we do quarterly as well. So for Deb, you know, those you might want to take a look at because it's a nice summary of the quarter activities, and but it only comes out once a quarter. I mean, we touch on things at every meeting, but these kind of summarize it, so might be something to watch for. If there's no questions, that's all I had for the General Manager's report. They're all looking for it.
I didn't have any, you know, as I examined it. I was thinking with the rate report, that we might have a meaningful conversation about that with our next strategic discussion, just to really kind of dig into the bones of rates here in the region. We aren't nearly as competitive as we used to be, and so I think it'd be good for us as a commission to take a good look at those.
Yeah, and
you know, that'll come up here in a little bit, I suppose. But.
Yeah, that'll come up. We talked a little bit about that because we actually, one of the commissioners wanted to talk a little bit about, you know, how we, what the timeline is for large capital projects, both on the electric side and the water side.
Right.
And we thought under that report for regional electric rates, we could talk a little bit about some of the capital projects we've got coming up under that one. And then two of the big capital projects are number 14 and 15 for water, the lime sludge dewatering facility and the water tower construction timeline. Right. So we can talk about water under those. So maybe we'll talk about that just a bit.
Okay. Yep. John?
I just want to jump on the dashboard here, Bill. It may be beneficial here to just review this, especially since we have a few new commissioner, or at least one here that hasn't. Because, for example, on one of them you have budget and purchased power, and then you had budget and purchased energy. That may be a bit confusing.
Sure.
Here. And then some of the other, like set point and peak and that sort of thing. So it may be appropriate that we go in through that with a little bit more detail next time you produce that, to give a chance to have us understand that a little bit more. And then on an item here in your report regarding the solar garden.
Yep.
You noted here that now that the programs had 9 planned arrays, I think the terminology used.
Yep.
So you should probably think about giving us an update or what the staff has come up for a future plan, or is that, are we not going to continue with that, or are we going to look for further locations here for some time in a
Yep, and that's,
update as well? Yep.
we are working on that as well, so yeah.
Yep.
But that's a big item because the Capture the Sun program is very popular, and we've limited out on our site. So we're either looking at, taking a year off and surveying our customers to see kind of what they want to do, or we could quickly find another site and start another, and keep doing the project as we've been doing it. Because it is a nice outreach program too, because we send a letter out to all of our customers annually, have been. And I was at lunch today, someone approached me and praised us for those programs, just kind of out of the blue, community leader, and it's kind of nice. It wasn't my mom, no. But, yep.
Have we ever considered sharing in that with a property owner that has significant acreage that is close to town or in town, so that rather than just having a raise on property that we necessarily own as a city or a utility, that there might be a private sector or another public sector body that might be a partner in that?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good idea.
I'm thinking Anheuser.
Oh, yeah. Well, we have approached them. That would be a much
yeah.
larger project, and that would be one that we would work with our power supplier on.
Yep.
And so we're still analyzing that one. That's not a, well, we have looked at, I guess, for a customer participation, capture the sun type thing with one array.
Yep.
And one array is 70 panels. And so we've got 9 of those out at the site right now.
Yeah.
If we did one with, say, an Anheuser-Busch, that would be many arrays, 40, 50 arrays.
I'm
So
thinking
that
of the
would be a
visibility. Where we are now, we know where those are, and anybody that pays attention, I guess, knows where they are. But they aren't. They don't jump off the side of the road and say, "Hey, this is pretty cool stuff." They're kind of out of sight. So I was just thinking of some of these more public areas that might be useful. So. Deb?
Along those lines, hadn't there been discussion of maybe putting something right off of I-94 as we come into Moorhead? Which would be, if there was the land for that, it would be great to, send a message as people come into Moorhead of this is something that we're really committed to.
Yeah. Well, and the one we're looking at was right at Anheuser-Busch, right by Sam's Club.
Right.
And we've got a water tower right there as well. We're in discussions on that, whether the economics work out between Bush and us and our power supplier, we'll see.
That'd be great.
Yeah, so we're working on that.
Yeah.
Okay, John.
Whose solar panel plan is along the interstate here on both sides as you're going to the cities?
Whose are those?
Is that XL's or?
Stearns County.
Is this Stearns County?
Yeah, that's a cooperative.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So they don't put, I guess, they don't get much PR for how they've put that in there, but that seems like similar to something we could do similar to as far as how they take advantage of that open space.
Yep. A lot of cooperatives have put them in the front yard of their service centers, and their service centers right off of interstate. So, yeah, very visible.
I was in Germany earlier this year, and they have a lot of them now with pollinator gardens underneath. So you don't take the land out of business. You actually have the pollinator gardens underneath, which is a big issue in Europe right now. So you let it grow wild, and have the panels, I think, a little bit higher up, and just have the garden underneath. So
Yeah, the community leader that I was talking to this morning, or at noon, not my mom. No, not my mom. Mentioned that pollinator gardens would be a nice addition to the one we have right now.
I saw them used as shade over parking lots as well. I think General Motors does that, at some of their plants in Michigan and other places. But they were actually using them as shade providers over parking.
In fact, I think the city of Duluth has done that.
Have they? Yeah. So lots of ideas.
Yeah, lots of things to think about.
Cool. Anything else on that? Bill, anything more from your report?
No, not unless there's questions. Well, maybe one thing, and you can look at it under the energy services dashboard, this is one thing that we've been looking at, a sign at our electric vehicle charging station that's right along Interstate.
Oh, right, yeah.
And that'll be a substantial sign. It's actually paid for half by us and half by Missouri River Energy Services, so that's nice. And it'll be right in front of Starbucks, Qdoba, that area. And when it comes in, I'm almost a little afraid how visible it is going to be. So it'll be a nice big sign.
Do we have interstate signage for that?
We don't yet, but Dennis is working on that.
Tells the motorists that
Yep.
that is there?
Yep, and it's on all the apps, so everybody knows on the apps that
Is that a
it's there.
MnDOT application? Is it? Okay.
And MnDOT is actually looking at how they're going to do that statewide,
I see.
and they're looking at that, so we're talking with them about that.
Yeah. Cool. How many users do you think are driving by on the interstate?
Dennis would have that
day-to-day?
information, he's not here today. We can get that for you, but it's the most used site of this Zeph Energy partner that they have.
Yep.
Between Moorhead and Michigan right now.
Really? Wow.
So I mean, I think it's
Including
a popular.
the cities? Wow.
Yeah, I'm not sure how many they have right in the cities, and they're developing them all along that route. In fact, they want to go all the way from Montana to Michigan.
Yeah.
And but this is the most used site so far
How do we expedite the signage application? Is
for MnDOT.
to get them?
Well, if you know anybody at MnDOT, yeah, I mean we're talking with them right now. It's going just a bit slow, but I mean it's something we're working on.
Yeah.
They're trying to figure out how to standardize that.
Yeah, I suppose a blue panel versus the brown or green panel signs.
Well, and
they have their codes, but
it's just it's a blue. It looks like a gas pump with an EV on it, and a cord.
Yeah.
And that's what our sign will look like too. Big blue cube with that signage on it. And that's the same kind of signage you would use on the interstate as well.
Yeah.
But it'd probably be blue and it would say this exit or whatever.
Yeah, it's one of the services that would be. Yeah. Okay.
And we have the ability to expand that, right? There's a space right next to it, to the east, right?
Yep.
Cool.
Yep.
Cool. All right. Anything else, folks? Item E is an item to accept the report on regional electric rates. I already brought that up a little bit, but shall we dive in?
Yeah, and I'll just start with this one, and then Nancy can talk about the capital projects that are affecting some of this. But generally, we do this probably on a 6-month basis. What we do is we're doing reconnaissance all the time on what our regional electric competitors are. And whenever we see something about somebody having a rate increase or changing their rates, that type of thing, then we will do this report. And, it just gives us a nice timeline and good data for future use. What you'll see in this report is that we're neck and neck with Xcel Energy of Fargo. And that's generally, especially for large customers, that's kind of our competition. So when we've got large customers that are looking at locating in Moorhead or locating at Fargo, large electric users, they generally are looking at the industrial park in Fargo. And that's covered by Xcel Energy. And then we also do throw in residential rates as well. We're just a hair higher than Xcel on residential rates, and we're just a little bit lower than them on the commercial rates. And like I say, we do keep track of this. We also have Cass County, Xcel Minnesota, which is different than Xcel North Dakota, more the rural area in this area. And then we do have Red River Valley Cooperative Power in there as well. And the cooperative and Xcel Minnesota are a bit higher than North Dakota. So North Dakota has different regulations. Their rates are a little bit tougher probably to compete with. And but that's, again, one that we compete with from an economic development standpoint. And and we watch it really close. And of course we talk a bit about our big, cost factors. Purchase power is our largest cost. And then after that, I believe the transfer is the next highest. So I mean, purchase power, purchase power is probably 60% of our costs, and then the transfer is about 21%. So as we move into the future and costs, well, our power supply costs, as we grow, and we looked at this really hard today, and I'm trying to figure out how far up to back up. We have two power suppliers, Western Area Power, which is our federal allocation from the federal hydro projects along the Missouri River. That covers 50% of our power supply. The other 50% of our power supply comes from Missouri River Energy Services, which is a joint action agency of municipal utilities in the region. And their rates are about twice as high as Western Area Power. Western Area Power rates are capped or fixed. We can't get any more of that power because the dams only can produce that much power. So all of our excess comes from Missouri River at about twice the rate of Western Area Power. Therefore, every new load that we add to Moorhead puts upward pressure on our rates. And so we have to look at the economics pretty closely on that. So what we are a bit concerned about is as we grow, if we don't do something to manage costs, our rates will go up faster than others. So with that, maybe it's a good time to transition to talk a little bit about large capital projects. And either Nancy maybe can start.
Just a second, Bill.
Yep.
I just had a question about the report. Yeah, so about the rate competitiveness score. So I really appreciated that you gave the context of just how Moody's creates the score, and really instead it's better to look at some of our local competitors. But I was wondering, so they rated us for rate competitiveness at an A. Is that relatively new that we've dropped to an A? If so, how long ago? So what was our score previously?
Well, we have a composite rate, and then we have sub-rates.
Yeah,
yep.
but
and
just
Nancy
for that
can
one part of it.
probably answer that just a bit better than I can.
Yeah, so our composite rate is a double A3, and within that there are about 7 different rating categories. Most of those categories we rate in the AA rating also.
Right.
Our rate competitiveness is the one that we might want to take a look at closer than the others. We're doing okay in those, but if there's something we could do to boost that up a little bit, it would strengthen our AA overall rating.
Yeah, and that's the one that's what I wanted to know is, did we recently drop to an A in that one, or has it been that way for a while and then just wanting to keep that on the radar?
Yeah, we started looking or really working on our bond rating back in like 2012, and we actually got an overall upgrade to AA3, and we've maintained that since then. And then the increments within it will fluctuate a little bit. We've worked really hard on reserves, making sure we're in the AA category on that. In some of the other areas, and this is the one yet that we have not been able to tackle and get it upgraded yet. But the strength in the other categories does hold us in that AA rating.
Right.
So getting to the brass tacks of what you just said, that we do something to improve our rate rating. What is that?
Well, it's
we cut rates, I mean, what is it that you're saying that would have to happen for us to improve that rating?
Well, we're always looking at, the charter says that we will be efficient and economical.
Right.
And we're always looking at where we can do things a little bit better and more economical. 60% or so of our costs come from our power supplier. I'm on the board of Missouri River Energy Services, and we watch their costs.
Yep.
And because it's a big part of our costs, they watch it, but we don't have direct control over that too terribly much. The next highest one is a transfer, and so I think we always have to be looking and watching that, and especially since that one is about 4 times the national average. So, there's probably room to do something with that, but then, of course, that's going to affect taxes.
But that affects, the city finances,
And then there's all the other local costs for, supplying the power, doing the billing, all those other things that, again, we're going to look at what ways that we can, be more economical. And then, probably parlaying into talking about capital projects, those affect our costs as well. And we're on the verge of doing automated meter infrastructure, and that's going to be a large ticket item. we've delayed it about as long as we can delay it because of the economical part of this, because it's going to increase costs. And but I don't think we can delay that anymore, and we're going to be talking about that over the next while.
Yep.
I think it's going to help people to have more equitable rates, but it's going to increase our costs. So we do that somewhat reluctantly, and we're going to try and do that as efficiently as we can. And we are looking at doing it jointly with others as well. So we're looking at things all the time. So,
John?
So have we either asked or has Moody's said how much we would have to lower our rates to get it up to a AA?
Nancy's got that information.
I know it, and I'll have to see if I can recall it right now, but I think we have to be 7 to 15% below the median average, and they're looking at that state of Minnesota average, so it has to be below that average.
Okay.
I think it's 7 to 15%.
Below the average?
Below, yes.
So
Do you know where we're at right now? I mean, because we're below average, but we're probably not 7.5%
No,
below
I
average.
think we're very close to average, I think. I'd have to.
So it's probably a target
as
that's going
we-
to be very difficult to achieve.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't consider our marketplace that includes the competitive marketplace of Fargo, Cass County?
You know, they use more of that global approach, and I don't think we're going to sway them to look at, you know, Moorhead sitting here next to Fargo. I don't think they're going to look at that. They're going to use their standards,
Okay.
and that's that state average.
Okay.
You know, and we'll know more. They'll be looking at that number again this year. So later on this year, we'll go to the bond market and sell about $10 million worth of bonds. So we'll get rated again. We'll have a chance to have some conversations with them there at that point too.
Cool. Always look forward to those.
I think anecdotally, you know, we will say that we're competitive in our metro area, and that'll make a difference in the story. I don't
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
you know, in their tabulations on their graphs and stuff, it may not matter as much, but
Yeah, well, I think your bar chart is important in that. So, you know, it tells more of that story that I was just asking for as
Right.
opposed to Minnesota,
Yep.
you know, which that doesn't have a lot to do with what we deal with competitively in this community pushing, you know, westwards. Okay.
But also on that note, I mean, I've been on the commission for about 9 years, and when I started out, we were below Fargo.
Yep.
And we were significantly below Fargo. So we have moved up to a variety of reasons. I mean, we have a more reliable system, no question about it.
Yeah.
But we have definitely moved up in the last 10 years or so.
and we're keeping a close eye on that. Right now, our load or our sales is actually pretty flat with LED lighting and that type of thing. It's kind of given us a reprieve on our growth. So it hasn't put a lot of upward pressure on our rates. But we used to be 15% below XL, probably a decade ago. And now we're right on par, as you can see in the report. What we're concerned about is with, you know, significant growth, you know, will we be 15% higher than XL in a decade? And that's what we're really watching. And, you know, we could be, because we have different, like I mentioned, the cost impacts to our rates are different than XL's.
It's a benefit as well as a hardship, but you know, we've gone about 3 years without an actual increase in our cost of energy, even though we've dealt with other increases. So you know, we've seen our rates have to adjust to those things. But if we had actually had increases in the cost of our power supply, we'd really be seeing a problem for us competitively. So.
Well, and if we didn't have the Western allocation, right? How long is that agreement going? Another 40 years, right?
It's a long time.
A long time ago.
About 40 years.
I mean,
40-some years, right?
yeah. The only thing you're really worried about in that one is, you know, the presidents always in their budget say we're going to sell those assets, and then our rates would go up overnight, and that would be unfortunate, you know.
In big numbers. Yeah. Well, it's always an interesting discussion, and it is whenever we go to D.C. for those conversations with our representatives who are supposed to take care of that stuff for us. But we'll get into that some more with our planning. Does that require another foray to the Moody's offices again?
They do calls most of the time.
Are they doing
unless
calls
it's-
now? That's good.
Well,
Okay.
We would maybe go out there if we were at the point where we were anticipating an upgrade or
Oh,
something
okay.
like that, but we're stably within that AA rating, so at that point,
Should be able to handle
it'll
it
just
on
be
the
the
phone.
phone call.
Okay, good.
Yep.
yeah. I mean, Missouri River Energy Services is actually poising themselves for an upgrade.
Yeah.
And it'll come after they get done with their Red Rock hydroelectric power project.
Right.
And because there's so much construction risk with a project of that size, that Moody's has said, if you come in, in a reasonable price, in a reasonable time, then you're positioned well for an upgrade.
Yeah.
When they get an upgrade, that would be when we would want to go and say, because that's what we did last time. They got an upgrade. We went and got an upgrade about the same time.
Right.
And Red Rock Hydro project is still about a year out. So maybe we would be going to New York in a couple of years to do the presentation in person, like we did in 12 or whatever that was.
Gosh, was that long ago?
I think so.
Jeepers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Say, Nancy, I know the last time we had issues with the reserves, but we have built them up enough that we're comfortable that we're meeting the goals, right, on the reserves?
We do. We're slightly above our 200 days on the electric side, and so we've put those monies away for things like some of these capital improvements that are coming up. Bill talked about the AMI, automated metering infrastructure, so that's a $6 million project we'll be kicking off, I believe, next year, and spend those funds down over the next 2 or 3 years instead of going to the bond market for that. So we do try to make measured trips into that bond market and selling bonds. So we choose to finance only when we need to, so we do fund a lot of our improvements out of cash. I think we've got to the tune of about $4 million annually out of the electric division that we finance via cash receipts. So we do make those bonding trips on the electric side infrequently.
Yeah. And to be frank, Councilmember White, I can't emphasize the importance of that enough. We get criticized sometimes because we have so much money. It's for a lot of good reasons, including that bond rating and getting this work done that we need to get done and not going into debt any further than we do. But those reserves have been very important to us in getting an awful lot of work done that otherwise, I don't want to say we'd ever be Flint, Michigan, but we're replacing infrastructure at an important rate because we have to. And we're taking care of the community in these ways because that's our job. And it takes these reserves and those savings accounts to draw on in order to accomplish that. So welcome. Yeah, I'll take every chance I can to make those points.
My ears bent.
But these are important points. So.
But maybe to clarify too, we don't have so much money.
Well, we don't. yeah. And I mean,
Just enough.
Thank you for clarifying because we don't.
That's marketing.
Yeah. It looks like it, but they're there for a reason. So
Good to know.
Now, we did pass out a sheet of paper that's fairly busy, and you may want to just kind of take a look at it, but I think we might want to spend a little bit more time on the water side because we've got water on the agenda. But the Budget Committee will be going through this type of information. This is just our capital expenditures budget, and it's very preliminary at this time. There's a lot of numbers on there. I don't know if you've got any questions or if you want to hit some highlights, Nancy.
Well, a couple items there, and normally, shade in the bonding ones. So in 2021, there's some money that we're looking at bonding a project. One of the important things we do, and you say, what do we do to save money and not spend money? When we look at these capital projects, you can see we've got a 10-year program laid out there. And one of the important pieces is deciding when to do these improvements, such as a substation on the south side. We don't want to build it before we need it, but we want to be ready and be there and have things available as the city grows and expands. So that's done in conjunction with the city, making sure that we're ready and have our electric utility there and ready to serve as they expand too. So we look at those, we look at timing, we try not to make those large investments until we need to do that. Such as in 2023, we've got a substation down on 55th Avenue. That may or may not happen during the budget process this year. We'll take a look at that. I think there's a electric master plan in process right now where we've got some engineers that will take a look at that and help us figure out, is that a good year? Do we need to start it? Can we push it off? Are there other things that we need to do at substations and things to make sure our power quality stays up, our reliability stays up, and help us make those efficient choices on when to upgrade those assets? So on the electric side, maybe a new facility in the next couple of years, maybe a substation a couple of years after that, and then AMI coming at us really soon. Those are probably the highlights there, above and beyond the approximate $4 million that we spend each year upgrading systems.
Any questions, John?
Well, Bill and I had just spoke briefly here, and I thought it was important that we just kind of look at what's coming up here in the near future. When you look at the water tower, a couple of $1 million, the sludge fund, $7 million, AMI, the potential of the aquifer lines that we may or may not need here or implement here for it. So there is a significant amount of capital that we are going to need to do, and potentially, based on demand and growth, may have to do as well. So I think it's something that I think we always need to be aware, because Ralph and I had been on the budget committee in the past here. So these are significant dollars, and they could have an impact on our users as far as rates and quality of service and all that sort of thing. So I think it's important to share with the community as well as the city and the city council that they're aware of these large projects, because you're talking 10, 15, $20 million. Those are real dollars, and we need to make sure we keep good communication that they're aware of what's happening within the utility.
And we'll probably put a budget committee report, regularly on the agenda for a few meetings during this fall, so that we can kind of educate everybody on the budget process. Even though the budget committee is going to go into the detail, we can kind of give a little bit of an update and again educate on some of these major items. So it was a good suggestion, and we'll work on keeping that in front of you this fall.
In fact, to further develop your point, it might be a good idea, Chris and Ralph and Bill, that we do an update for this group. Got a couple new members as well on water supply, the strategic water supply conversation, and what it is that we did now a couple of years ago to actually pursue our own strategy for developing water supply, as opposed to definitely participating with the Missouri River project. So I think it'd just be a good idea to get that back in front of us, so that everybody gets a chance to really be up to date on that. So, because that is that long-term investment in supply infrastructure and a new wellhead and all of those things. So
well, we'll talk about that just a little bit when we get to item number 14 and 15. So we'll pass out another sheet just like this one for water. And kind of give you a little bit of a highlight on that one too. Okay. You'll know that learn that we talk about water and electric, somewhat, well, more in public services, water and electric, but we separate those into two business units and kind of talk about them separately. This is the electric one, and then we'll get into the water one a bit later when you get down to 14. Which is further on that? Which is next. Yeah.
I move to accept the report of the regional water. The regional electric.
Yeah, we kind of got off topic.
I'll second.
Motion and second, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. He gets to make the motions, he gets to talk about it. In addition to this.
Chris Knutson, Water Division Manager. So just a little bit of background. John alluded to one of the big expenses we have coming in the near future, and that's a lime sludge facility. And I'll just go into a little bit of the background as to why, first off, kind of why do we need it, and then maybe lay out some of the costs and timeline. So as part of our water treatment process, we produce lime sludge. We soften the water using lime softening, and sludge is the residual product of that treatment process. And for the last 20 or so years, 20 plus years, we've actually used ponds to store that lime sludge material. Back in 2015, PCA changed how they regulate that lime sludge material, and we were forced to kind of look at some different options going into the future as to how we really store and manage that material that we produce on an ongoing basis. With that being said, we really settled on a lime sludge dewatering facility, and essentially what a lime sludge dewatering facility is just taking that sludge. It's like a pretty viscous liquid. It's basically takes that liquid and compresses it into a solid, and that solid you can dispose of in a number of ways. And so that's what we've been investigating. We just recently completed the 30% design level drawings for the facility. It'll be located just northwest of our water treatment plant. At the 30% level, we, working with SEH, they came up with a design level budget cost, including engineering of the facility and engineering of the pond, at about $7.032 million. In our 2019 capital budget, we had $7 million budgeted, so we're on the right track. We're still working on really fine-tuning the design of the facility and hoping to be bidding this fall. We'll be bonding for that project and hope to have the bidding complete at the end of the fall, possibly with construction starting in 2019. It's likely a 2-year project, although we're still working on timeline. Could possibly start in 2019. Could start this very, very late in 19, but likely 20. Yeah. Hopefully completion in 2021. So that's where we're at in the process. Is a big milestone in the project in that we're basically approving taking it from the 30% design level for the facility to the 100% design level, and the cost with SEH is at just slightly below $300,000 to take it to that design level. We've been happy with SEH's performance thus far on the project, and hoping to continue to move forward.
Questions? Concerns? John?
Chris, I'm trying to find the statement here, but I think I saw somewhere that we are proposing to give an extended time frame to build this project due to the fact that we are going to build another pond. Basically, can you just review the savings that we would have on the construction project versus the expense of the additional pond expense?
Yeah, so we're currently using 12 existing ponds, and we're approaching the storage capacity of those 12 existing ponds. So the thought process is we could build a pond in the window between completion of this facility. We could use that pond as a storage mechanism while the facility is still being constructed. Once that pond is, you use it until basically the building is done. The cost of the pond is roughly between $250,000 to $300,000 on the cost of the pond. The pond will also be using that pond going into the future as a redundant mechanism, i.e., the press is really just one unit, and the press costs about between $500,000 and $800,000. So we're only going to put one press in just to save money. If the press were to fail or we have to take it off for maintenance, we'll use that pond as a redundant facility. So the cost of the pond is much less than adding a second press within the facility. So we'll size the facility for another press someday, but we won't put it in. And that pond will really kind of act as a redundant facility for that lime sludge dewatering facility.
And that pond we would have to clear out, right? The existing ponds we can leave as they are?
Yeah, we're working on PCA. The permitting for that new pond is ongoing, and we're working with PCA thus far in conversations we've had with them. They've indicated that we likely can leave those existing ponds as is, i.e. we don't have to dredge or clean them out. The new pond that we would permit, based on the rules that PCA has, we'd have to clean that pond out every 3 years. The good news in that scenario is that once the lime sludge facility is built, we can actually clean it out, pump that sludge back into the facility, and dewater that sludge and then bring it somewhere. Likely we're working on kind of where that sludge goes, likely a landfill of some type in the area.
And that was actually my next question. Where is this stuff going to go once it's pressed? Are we looking at Clay County or?
Yep. We've had several conversations with Clay County, and they're looking at evaluating the sludge as a potential material for the landfill site. It would be a significant portion of their stream, so they have to look at it and make sure that they're comfortable in handling it. But we've also had some initial conversations with another landfill in the area as well. We really have two options for disposal. We can either put it in a landfill. That's the preferred option. The secondary option would be to put it in, to basically land apply it somewhere. And in order to land apply it, we probably have to drive that sludge to the Wadena area, somewhere where the soils can accept the sludge material. So that's not as preferable from an operational standpoint, but it's an option nonetheless. So we're still working on the options for where this sludge actually lands, but nonetheless, all roads really lead towards that sludge facility. We have to press it. It's just where does it go when we're done with it.
Are you confident of that October 2021 date, given this schedule?
It's a rough timeline. SEH has indicated, based on some initial conversations with them, that it's likely we'll be able to get it done by that timeline.
Yeah. Okay.
But we haven't talked to a lot of contractors yet because it's still pretty early in the design phase.
Yeah.
But I think it's reasonable.
And there are a number of contractors in the area that would build this facility.
Yeah, I think there'd be a number of interested parties just because the building, there's a lot of folks that build that type of building. It's the mechanical work inside the building that adds some complexity to the project, but the building itself is not terribly complex.
Yeah.
And the idea is to have two bays, one with a press in and the other one empty for future press?
Correct, yeah. So basically one press and then an empty spot for a future press to allow for expansion. So the facility, as we're kind of one of the design parameters that we have on the facility, is basically up to 10 million gallons a day. Hopefully this facility can handle. So if we do a expansion on the water plant's a 10 million gallon per day facility, we'd likely expand that lime sludge dewatering facility at the same time.
And if you go at 12 million gallons, you pump it into the pond and then pull it back out to compressors or something.
I suppose that would work. You could do it during peak times. You could pump it to the pond and bring it back during non-peak times. That's an option.
I know sludge.
Yeah.
Oh, there's a landfill
We're looking.
opportunity
Yeah.
there.
Still looking for sites.
Actually, he has the river in his backyard.
Right.
Yeah, that's not such a good idea. Yeah, that's true. Had we ever thought about the idea of acquiring ground for our own fill site?
So, yeah, we did look at that. So there's some complexity there in terms of PCA won't permit a new landfill. So that's the chance. We can't basically start our own landfill, and then the closest place to basically bring it that we know of is in the Wadena area. That the Department of Agriculture actually governs where this stuff can be applied, and that's kind of where we've determined it to be. There's other options in North Dakota. So MPCA governs landfills in Minnesota. We haven't thoroughly explored all of the options that might be available within North Dakota because our preference has been to stay within our jurisdiction here, but I would call them secondary or tertiary options in terms of looking at sites within North Dakota.
Yeah. Good. Anything more, folks? We're good. Shall we take action?
I move to approve item 14.
Got a motion?
Second?
Got a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Item number 15 is to approve actions related to the I-94 water tower construction timeline adjustments. Adjusting and moving it. So, you know, that project just seems to be in constant motion.
Yeah.
Where are we going with it, Chris?
Yeah. So as John discussed, kind of two big projects are really in the near term are the sludge project at $7 million, and Southside Water Tower about $3 million. And as the commission is aware, we extended the construction timeline for the Southside Water Tower to increase the competitiveness of bids for that project. And during the rebid process, we did get much more favorable bids for that project. One of the pieces that we are hoping to resolve as a result of extending that construction period is an adjustment of the timeline for the I-94 water tower project. So why do we need to adjust the timeline? I-94 was currently scheduled, or is currently scheduled for 2020. Completion of the Southside Tower won't happen until 2021. So what we're looking to do is basically move I-94 to after the completion of the Southside Tower, which would occur in midsummer 2021. So basically move this project from 2020 to 2021. And the reason for that is from a pressure and operational standpoint, we'd really like to have that Southside Tower complete before we take down the I-94 tower. So we have to, when we paint the tower, we have to empty all the water out, can't really use it for a significant amount of time. Thus, that's why we would like to get that Southside Tower done before we complete the painting process on I-94. So it's really a two-part item tonight. The first item is task order number 13 with KLM Engineering. And essentially what that does is move the timeline from 2020 to 2021. KLM is the company that we've contracted with for completion of the rehabilitation of the I-94 tower. And so you'll note that the contractual adjustment for the task order 13 is $35,000. That's the cost, basically the inflation cost to take it from 2020 to 2021. The second part of the item is a one-year extension for the artwork submission for the water tower art agreement with the City of Moorhead. And this was an agreement that we worked on in January of 2019. And really the agreement was that the City of Moorhead would develop the artwork for the I-94 water tower and submit that artwork by September 1st of this year. Obviously, we're not intending to paint the I-94 tower next year in 2020 as we'd originally proposed, so we're proposing to extend that timeline for artwork submission basically from September 1st of 2019 to September 1st of 2020. So just a one-year extension, and we've been in contact with city staff regarding that extension, and I think both parties feel it's appropriate, so allows them to complete their design process. I don't believe their design process is complete.
I think they wanted more time.
Yep.
Yeah. That actually fits pretty well.
So we wanted them in the same item because if we have to approve the task order number 13 in order to extend the artwork. Yeah. So they kind of go hand in hand.
And maybe the city will have their new logo by then. Had to bring it up. Had to bring it up.
Staying out of that one.
Actually, yeah, I think the conversation was that this wasn't necessarily a logo project. This was going to be something more creative than that. So anyway, had to have a little fun.
But it required the branding first.
Yeah, yeah. So, okay. Any questions about the timeline? And, let's be flexible, I guess. So, I'd entertain a motion.
I would move to approve. Can I do that?
Can
I
she do
can't,
that?
sorry. I'm an
But
alternate.
thank
I didn't
you
know
very
since,
much.
if Heidi's not here, I didn't know.
I appreciate your enthusiasm.
Yeah.
No.
The liaisons, neither one can do. Right.
Ah,
I don't.
Okay, so
I don't believe even Heidi
I
can.
would support it, though.
But we do appreciate the support. So, all righty. So
Thanks
I
for
will
the
entertain a motion.
Move to approve item number 15.
Okay. Got a second? Got a second? Motion and a second to approve item number 15. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. We are closing tonight.
We aren't closing. I was going to make one comment because of the vote. You will have a chance to vote on some of these things, like the sludge plant construction.
Yeah, these go to
Well,
council.
that's good.
These go to
Yeah.
council.
Vote on sludge.
And the financing, because by charter, projects that have to comply with the state law have to go to the council as well. So the commission will approve it, then it'll go to the council. Same thing with bonding. So the bonding that Nancy talked about, you will see that at the council meeting. And then that'll be your opportunity even to move it and all that type of thing.
Great.
So that is helpful that you're,
I think we'll have to have Ralph come and talk about the sludge.
there you go. Yeah, come.
Lime sludge.
Watermelons are cool, but sludge is where it's at.
Now, Nancy did pass out
Yep.
this sheet of paper. I don't know if you wanted to look at that at all. That puts a little bit of context in things. But again, we'll bring that up in the future as kind of report items as we're talking through the budget committee activities.
Our first meeting would have been next week, our first meeting of September, but since we're meeting this week, we're not going to meet next week.
Okay.
I kind of pulled that one
Yep.
on my own, but
Yeah, and
didn't
then,
see a reason to meet
and then
too.
the September,
And then September 17th is our date, and we won't drag you too much through the mud for putting 27th on our paperwork, but things happen. But the 17th would be our next meeting now. So will that one be here or downtown?
17th should be downtown.
Should be downtown. Okay, cool. All righty. Any further business? I'd entertain a motion to adjourn. Got a second? Second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. We are adjourned.
Great. Yeah, so Bill, if you get me a pad, that you have a